What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Ticket with Tippett. Today, we are going through and we are going to redraft the 2025 Dynasty rookie class. The 2025 class wasn't a crazily hyped class. It had some decent prospects in it, and they've actually gone out and produced pretty well. So, 2025 class will be interesting to go through and redraft. There's a couple things that will change drastically, and we'll have some fallen soldiers as well in there. We're only going to do 2 rounds of this. So round one, it'll be 12 picks each, just like a normal Superflex format for Dynasty. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to jump right in with our 101. And the obvious 101 is still Ashton Genty. I mean, he finished as an RB1 this season, probably behind the worst offensive line. I mean, the stuff run rate was absurd. He had 71 times where he was tackled behind the line of scrimmage or touched behind the line of scrimmage on a stuff run. So crazy that he was able to finish as the RB12. And we'll show some efficiency stats from each player, obviously, as they pop up. So we will go ahead and do that for you so that way you can take a look at their full metrics chart. So Ashton Genty, still the 101, and that's because going into 2026, I mean, we saw the addition of Tyler Linderbaum. The defense improved drastically, so they're going to be in more run-heavy situations where Genty's going to be able to exploit the defense. And now we add a steady quarterback, hopefully, in Fernando Mendoza, who's likely going to be the #1 pick. So I don't see why Ashton Genty would not be the 101. We'll keep it pretty short with him. And my 102 is Omarion Hampton. And the reason for this is basically because of Mike McDaniel. I would say that Ted McMillan would probably be my #2, but because of the addition of Mike McDaniel as the offensive coordinator in Los Angeles, that immediately bumps him up. I mean, look at what he's done with every single running back since he's been, I think, an offensive coordinator and head coach since 2022. It's been crazy. So with that addition of Mike McDaniel, his receiving floor has gone up drastically. I think that his receiving floor is much improved from what it was last year, where maybe Kamani Vidal was taking a little bit of that receiving floor. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. And Keaton Mitchell comes in for Baltimore. That's just like probably a John Harbaugh to Jim Harbaugh, like, hey, this guy's pretty decent. You can use him as your backup running back. So I don't see him coming in and taking too much of the workload away from Omarion Hampton. I think that this is Omarion Hampton's backfield to take as long as he can stay healthy, and along with their offensive line staying healthy and Joe Alton, Rashawn Slater, both getting injured for majority and all of last season. They never really got off on the right foot. You'll see he finished RB35 last season in overall fantasy points per game in PPR format. So, I mean, there's a little bit of improvement to be had and a little bit more healthy seasons, hopefully, to come for the Chargers. And my 103, I talked about him at the 102, was Ted McMillan. This is a guy who easily could end up going 102, basically kind of depending on need. But in an overall draft, I think Omarion Hampton's future looks a little bit better. Ted McMillan still has the Bryce Young quarterback problem, but he is a really big, strong target for Bryce Young to just kind of throw the ball up and say, hey, Ted's down there somewhere, right? So he's going to come down with most of those contested catch opportunities. And I mean, you just can't get much better than having Ted McMillan as your big outside threat at wide receiver. And another reason why he's above some of the quarterbacks that are in this class, the Panthers haven't added really anybody of value to their receiving core. I mean, they brought Jalen Coker back, but other than that, I mean, all the cokeheads can rest easy because he's the wide receiver 2 right now. So I think Ted's an easy 103, even above these quarterbacks that we're about to list off and rattle off here. Because at #4, we got Jackson Dart. And the main reason that I think you should take Jackson Dart over Cam Ward right now is just because of the supporting cast that Jackson Dart's likely going to have. He's got, John Harbaugh, who's been known to develop quarterbacks at a pretty fast rate. And so was Brian Dable. So he's had 2 pretty much quarterback-friendly coaches in his career so far. So I think that Harbaugh is going to help him take the next step. The supporting cast will get better. Neighbors will be back healthy again. You got Scatterbo. They're talking about adding Jeremiah Love. We'll see where that goes. So as far as everything goes, his development will get better, and they're going to add some pieces. So everything looks to be okay in New York for Jackson Dart for the foreseeable future. And my 105 is Emeka Egbuka. And this is for obvious reasons. Emeka Egbuka in the beginning of the season really showed out and balled out even with Mike Evans there. Chris Godwin was hurt. Chris Godwin comes back. Baker Mayfield gets injured. And then we see Emeka Egbuka's numbers kind of dwindle down as the season continued. So I think that was more of just Baker was injured. Something was bothering him, and it was really messing with the entire offense because Chris Godwin was in and out of the lineup. Mike Evans was in and out of the lineup. So there was so much change and fluctuation week to week in Tampa Bay. I don't think that anybody really got to settle their feet once they got like halfway through the season. So with Mike Evans moving on and Chris Godwin's contract having a 2027 club option, I could see a realistic world where Chris Godwin isn't there after this season, and Emeka Egbuka is the wide receiver one for the next 5 years in Tampa Bay, or maybe even 10 years like Mike Evans had. And the next guy here is Luther Burden at the 106. And this is all about efficiency over opportunity. So obviously with guys like DJ Moore and Alameda Zacchaeus that were in Chicago in 2025, those guys are gone. So all those opportunities are now wide open and there for the taking. And between Colson Lovin, who we'll get to later, and Luther Burden, I think Luther Burden is going to tear it up because he had some awesome efficiency numbers. Like I said, it was just the opportunity that was super low. But when he gets those efficiency numbers that high, and now we add in opportunity with it, man, it could be scary for everybody. And he could easily probably take over the wide receiver one role there if Rome Odunze doesn't pick things up. And that leads me into my 107, who's Cam Ward. And the reason that I have him down at 7, I mean, to say it can't get worse than last year's supporting cast is an understatement because it really can't. Like last year's supporting cast for him, the players that were around him, it was not good. It was not a great situation. Head coach fired halfway through the season. The season fell apart for the Titans, and somehow Cam Ward still put together a decent season at quarterback 22 and stayed pretty healthy. And their offensive line wasn't terrible. Their offensive line actually might have been the saving grace for Cam Ward not getting injured. So now you bring in an offensive coordinator and Brian Dable, who has the likes of breeding Josh Allen and Jackson Dart in his most recent stint in New York. How does Cam Ward not benefit from having a guy like that who can fully focus his full attention to a guy like Cam Ward who has so much talent? I think that that's the best thing that could have happened for him this offseason is to get a guy like Brian Dable who can really just sit down and focus on his development. And at the 108, we got Quinshon Judkins, obviously coming off of that season-ending injury, but there are reports that he will go. He's good to go for camp. So there's no restrictions leading into the season, and that's great news for Cleveland. But while his injury news sounds great, the offensive line lost a couple pieces this offseason, like Wyatt Teller going to Houston. That's a big, big piece, a big veteran guard for them. So the interior of the offensive line is going to need some work in the draft. The interior offensive line is pretty decent in this year's draft. So I'd like to see them add, early there, hopefully, so that they can get a solid foundation for their run game. But until they find a solid quarterback and a competent quarterback, I mean, there's only so much that Quinshon Judkins can do. And I think right around RB2 is still where he's going to sit, and that's pretty good for Quinshon Judkins given the situation that he's in right now. So now at 109, we have Tyler Warren, tight end 4 last season, a great finish to his season, and really open up on fire out of the gates. And now you have a guy like Pittman who gets traded to the Steelers. That opens up a lot of the short area for not only Tyler Warren, but Josh Downs as well. But since we're only talking about rookies, Tyler Warren is going to get a ton more targets in the short area. And honestly, with Daniel Jones' injury coming out of his Achilles, I could see a world where they use Tyler Warren a lot in wildcat packages and like tush push type plays like they did at Penn State. So I think you could also see a couple rushing touchdowns for Tyler Warren if they get down to the goal line and they want to mix it up and not always bury Jonathan Taylor. And right behind him is Colson Loveland. He was tight end 12, about 2 years younger than Tyler Warren too. And he's going to be in a high-powered Ben Johnson offense with no more DJ Moore. And the big part, Alameda Zacchaeus leaving, was his biggest benefactor to his success. So with the large increase in his role, I could definitely see a world where Colson Lovin finishes, easily as a tight end 1. He already did this season as a rookie, and I could really see a world where he just kind of soars and takes off. But how valuable is the tight end position? It depends on your league. If it's tight end premium, he's going to be a little bit higher on this list, in this ranking, in this redraft. Take that with what you can and with what your league settings are. And at the 111, we have Travion Henderson, and he is just stuck in the Ramondre Stevenson hellhole, where he is stuck behind him for at least probably through the 2028 season. And the problem is that Travion has all the potential in the world, just doesn't have a lot of usage. Got stuck behind Quinshon Judkins at Ohio State, got stuck behind Ramondre Stevenson to start his NFL career. But when he has gotten on the field and was the primary back, he has shown that he is more than capable of producing, not only in fantasy, but in the actual NFL in terms of production and efficiency. And to round out the first round here, we have Harold Fannin. He was tight end 6, so finished above Colson Loveland, but I just like the situation for Colson Loveland a little bit more. I think that until the Browns find a quarterback, just like the same for Quinshon Judkins. I mean, how many red zone opportunities is Colson Loveland going to have versus a guy like Harold Fenton? And more than likely, there's no more David Njoku in Cleveland, so he is going to be the lead receiver for the Browns. I know they have other receivers, but as far as receiving work and opportunity goes, he's more than likely going to be the number one target. All right, and let's look at RJ Harvey here at the 201. He was RB20 last season, and he's now stuck with J.K. Dobbins again for another 2 years at least, which leaves the running back room in Denver very murky and very unpredictable. I would say expect very similar production from Harvey that he had last season when J.K. Dobbins was healthy. Now, if J.K. Dobbins gets injured, then you're going to have the same RJ Harvey that you had last season at the end of the season. We'll see what happens throughout the season, but don't expect an RB1 or RB2 role for him immediately when J.K. Dobbins comes back, because Dobbins is going to take the early work. And here at the 202, we have Tyler Shuck. He was quarterback 26 last year, and I think he's definitely worth the investment, especially, at this point in like a mock draft scenario. He's definitely worth the investment. I just don't know. I mean, he proved a lot this past season, but he's just not on the same level as the Cam Wards or the Jackson Darts, right? So those guys in that world are just on a different level, talent wise and prospect wise, than a guy like Tyler Shuckham, which is why he fell in the draft to, I think it was the 3rd round. So the Saints are giving him solid options at running back. They give him Travis Etienne. So that adds like another receiver, really. So things are now looking a lot better for Tyler Shuck under Kellen Moore in New Orleans. And here at the 203, we got Cam Scatterbo. I'm still a Cam Scatterbo believer, and I'm praying that the Giants don't take Jeremiah Love, one that's coming from a Commanders fan. And no, I mean, I don't necessarily know if we're going to take Jeremiah Love, but I'm not saying it because of that. I'm saying that because of Cam Scatterbo's production and what I'd like to see, the Giants do with their team. I mean, I don't know if Jeremiah Love, I'd rather see them take receiver. I think they really need a receiver. No more Wan'Dale Robinson. Malik Neighbors coming back from an injury. I think they have to go receiver at some point because they didn't sign anybody in free agency. So the ideal situation for Scatterbo would be to play the RB1 role and have Tyrone Tracy Jr. play the receiving role. That would give him high touchdown upside on any given year that he's put out there. So hopefully if he can stay healthy and keep his high motor and his high touchdown upside, then I mean, I think he's worth a shot. And now we'll move on to Matthew Golden, who was wide receiver 89, and wide receiver 89 is not great in any measure, but that Packers wide receiver room was so crowded last year, and at least one guy moved on. It was Romeo Doubs moving on to New England. Now, hopefully somebody can take over that Romeo Doubs role, but someone's also got to take the Christian Watson role. And I think that Matthew Golden fits that perfectly. So I could see a world where now Matthew Golden becomes a viable, flex option, possibly week to week in Dynasty Fantasy Football for years to come in this Green Bay Packers high volume offense. And now here at the 205, we got Bashaw Tootin. So I think Liam Cohen does actually see Bashaw Tootin as the lead back there in Jacksonville now that Travis Etienne has moved on. But they did sign Chris Rodriguez, and as a Washington Commanders fan, I can tell you right now that Chris Rodriguez is actually a super, super efficient running back if you're really looking for like a powerful back who can get you yardage after contact. I could see a world where they just kind of fiddle with this 1A, 1B until Chris Rodriguez's contract runs out, and then maybe Tootin finally takes over, which is why I have him so far down in this draft. I think he would be over guys like Cam Scatterbo or Matthew Golden, but I just don't know how Chris Rodriguez is going to actually impact his chance to be a solidified RB1 on a team. And with Chris Rodriguez and Bashaw Tootin not really being great at receiving, LaQuint Allen could actually end up taking that receiving role. He did a little bit last season, especially near like early on in the season. He was the receiving back, and people thought that Bashaw Tootin was going to end up being a bust. But we'll see what happens with Jacksonville and how they decide to use their running backs. I could see it kind of being a two-headed monster to start on the early downs in LaQuint Allen if they're like 3rd and long situations. So in 206 is a Rondé Gadsden. Kind of the same thing as a Marion Hampton. We'll keep this one quick. McDaniel used guys similar to Gadsden, kind of like a Jonnu Smith, too high efficiency. And there's no more Keenan Allen, so he likely becomes the number 3 option in a high-powered, more than likely, very fast-paced offense that's going to throw the ball a ton. And we'll kind of go quickly through these next 6 just to kind of speed things up. So Jaden Higgins at the 207 saw a snap increase last season. He's ranked so low because Tank Dell is going to come back, and that is more competition for Jaden Higgins than Christian Kirk was, because Christian Kirk is just a slot guy. Tank Dell actually moves in and out of the slot and wide out, so I could see a world where he loses some snaps because Jalen Noel is a slot guy as well. So I could see a world where it's like a 3-man mix of a wide receiver too, kind of like they had last season. Even Xavier Hutchinson's still there, so that's even another guy to watch out for to take away from Jaden Higgins. production. And next is Kyle Monangai, and I think this is pretty simple. He is the number 2 to DeAndre Swift, and I don't care what you say. People are going to say that, oh, Monangai is going to take over. No, like DeAndre Swift is going to be the guy there, and more than likely, once Swift's contract ends, they're going to sign or draft somebody higher. I mean, Monangai is a good little piece, but like he's a handcuff. Like these next couple guys that are running backs here are handcuff running backs, and there's nothing more that they're going to do. And that leads me into another handcuff running back in Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt. So Bill showed signs of being capable of being a lead back, but the receiving game just is not there. He doesn't have the all-around build of a true RB1. Kind of the same thing. We'll see if the Commanders draft Jeremiah Love. Same thing with Cam Scatterbo. If that happens, his value is gone immediately. And the next one here is Dylan Sampson, another handcuff running back, but he's a little bit younger. And with Quinshon's injury history, I think he has a chance to kind of play off of that, but he's just not that efficient as a running back in the NFL yet. He could, obviously improve, but his main thing is his receiving role. But the quarterback situation there is so bad that, I mean, his receiving role might not be that much opportunity or that good of an opportunity to succeed. So he did have some good games and just kind of got washed out when Quinshon did come into the season. So, I mean, Dylan Sampson's just a handcuff running back to Quinshon Judkins, who's a much better player than him. And number 23 is Jalen Noel. Like I said, could take over the primary slot role now that Christian Kirk is gone. So, and while he does that, obviously he'll share a little bit of that with Tank Dell, who's coming back, and we'll see if Tank Dell can stay healthy. And the Texans' offensive line has been improved tremendously this offseason, so hopefully that leads to better CJ Stroud play, and we'll see where it goes from there. And then our last pick of the second round to round things out in this draft, and we'll get to some honorable mentions here in a second, but Shedeur Sanders, I think you still have to take a chance on him, even though it doesn't look likely that he's probably going to be a backup for the rest of his career once this stint is over. And Todd Monken has taken his reins and strapped them onto the Shedeur Sanders wagon. So I think that Shedeur Sanders has at least 1 or 2 more years as long as Todd Monken's the head coach in Cleveland. It seems like he might have a shot at being the quarterback, but I mean, this just feels like a mess. Deshaun Watson's actually going to be healthy this season. So, I mean, do they move on to Deshaun Watson? I genuinely don't know. I mean, you could take a flyer on him. He's a good little, interchangeable piece that you might be able to throw into your lineup every now and then. And then let's get to some of these honorable mentions. We have Alec Ironmanor. Obviously, they added Wan'Dale Robinson, so this tanks his value pretty high. They're likely going to draft offensive pieces all throughout the draft this year. I would be very careful if you're an Alec Ironmanor owner. And then we have Ollie Gordon from Miami. So obviously, rumors of Devon Achane being traded got shut down immediately. We had the Jalen Waddle trade a couple days ago, and then rumors started to fly around that Devon Achane might get traded as well. And Miami front office pretty much said, no, he's not going anywhere. We're sticking at least with Achane so we can have some firepower on our offense, right? Gordon will get some goal line work, but surprisingly, Achane has one of the highest goal line usage rates in the NFL, even for being as small as he is. So, I mean, that might change with the new head coach. And from there, I mean, Ollie Gordon's just a handcuff. And that's the same thing here for Woody Marks. And he's so far down here because he is 25 years old, lost his potential starting role to David Montgomery once they traded for him this offseason. So he'll likely play second fiddle to David Montgomery, and Montgomery is never really injured. So I don't see a world where it's going to be like, Joe Mixon's out for the season. They bring in an old Nick Chubb. Like, this is a very different situation than it was last year, and Woody Marks wasn't that efficient in his time as the lead back. And the next two are receivers, Trey Harris and Jack Bech, kind of similar-ish in a way. They didn't really get used over veterans, so there were veterans that were in their way. For Trey Harris, it was Keenan Allen who really gave him fits. Keenan Allen actually was the leading receiver as far as receiving yards and receptions for the Chargers last season, so he's out of there. Guys like Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, they're going to slide up. So now Trey Harris has a true chance to be the wide receiver 3 in an explosive offense. So we'll see if his efficiency can increase when given more opportunity. And then for Jack Bech, I mean, I don't know what the Raiders were even thinking. They signed Tyler Lockett after he got released by the Titans. Pete Carroll freaking brought all of his old friends over to Las Vegas and ruined that season for them. A chance for them to really sit down and rebuild and retool and grow and develop these young players, and they just completely wasted it with what they did. So now I think Las Vegas is going to try and take every opportunity they can to develop these players this year with Fernando Mendoza and give themselves probably, hopefully, a 2-year window to where they can be competitive. Plus, you had a coach like Clint Kubiak, who's a great offensive mind that could just open up plenty of things for Jack Bech. And the last one is just a guy I want to mention because I think he's still a little slept on. I think it's because the quarterback situation has been so bad, and that's Mason Taylor out of New York playing for the Jets. I mean, obviously, the quarterback situation has been awful there. I mean, when you have guys that are throwing to him like these guys that are about to pop up on the screen, I don't know who's going to succeed. So the question is, can the Jets find a proper quarterback to give them the targets and catchable targets that they need, especially for a young guy like Mason Taylor, who's a really he was a really good prospect as a tight end. So I'm interested to see, if Geno Smith can actually provide him a decent tight end season. And then I saved this section until the end because I want to talk about two guys who are our fallen soldiers in the 2025 class. And the first one being Caleb Johnson. Everybody knows Caleb Johnson might be one of the most recent biggest busts that we've seen in a while in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Like everybody was so high on Caleb Johnson. Like he creeped into the first round and then he started to get into like the mid first round of drafts, started to get into conversations of like Travion Henderson's and Quinshon Judkins area. And it just did not work out. He muffed that one kickoff in Pittsburgh and Mike Tomlin pretty much said that's it. So hopefully he gets a second chance with Mike McCarthy, but with them just signing Rico Dowdle and still having Jaylen Warren, he's still going to play that RB3 role. And the other fallen soldier is a guy who I never even took a shot on in fantasy anyways, as it was Travis Hunter. I just don't know. I don't know where everybody was getting first round buzz in dynasty rookie drafts out of him, because I mean, there was always the chance that he was going to play full-time defense. There was a chance because as good of a wide receiver as he was coming out of college, what did Jacksonville always need? They needed cornerbacks. They needed pieces on defense. So, I don't know why anybody was surprised that there were rumors starting to fly around, but right before he got injured that they were probably going to move him to like 75% corner and like 25% receiver. So this is a guy who pretty much has become completely useless, I think, in fantasy. And for the people who took him, you got what you got. Like, you're just gonna hold on to him until hopefully he produces something for you. So yeah, that's everybody that I think is worthy of the first two rounds, and then some honorable mentions, and obviously our two fallen soldiers who just, God rest their soul for fantasy football. We'll see what happens with these guys, but this is where I have them in order of, the results from this past season and the opportunity that they're gaining and getting into in 2026 and where that could take them. So if you enjoyed that content, go ahead and like, subscribe, comment below who you would have higher, or if I missed somebody that I didn't put in here. I think this is a pretty good list of like my top 30 guys. So, I think that's more than enough of a list. Let me know in the comments below who you would have higher or lower, and I'll kind of go through and respond to them, and we'll just chat about, what my takes were and how bad they were or how good they were. So other than that, thank you all for stopping by. Peace, love, and love, and we'll see you in the next one.